behalf of our chairperson, Ms. Ritusha, I, Smita Sanghi, Honorary Joint Secretary, Flow Hyderabad Chapter, would like to welcome you all to an enlightening session on Women on Family Board. Could I kindly request everyone to please put your phones on silent and rise for the national anthem?
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
It's an honor to request the floor chairperson, Ms. Ritusha, our guest today, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, Mr. K. Balaji, along with our day chair, Ms. Usha Rani Mane, and Y-Flow chairperson, Ms. Aarti Shah, to come forward for the lighting of the lamp. Ms. Jyotsna Angara, to join our esteemed guests for a photograph. Could I request the core committee followed by the AC committee for the photograph? Let's take a look at the impact that we have created at Flow Hyderabad chapter to inspire and nurture the entrepreneurial and professional spirit through networking, education, training, and making women more employable and adorable in the markets. Can we have the video, please? Empowering women to take their place on family boards not only enriches the decision making table but also nurtures a legacy of equality and progress within the heart of our businesses. Our session today takes us on a journey of Women on Family Board with Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, founder and MD, Organization Development Private Limited, Singapore, and Mr. K. Balaji, trustee, Palkiwala Foundation. It is an honor to invite the day chair, Ms. Usha Rani Mane, to address the gathering and introduce the initiative to our guests.
Namaste. Good afternoon to all our dignitaries, guest speakers, and attendees. Seeing many of you here, it's very clear indication of the shape of the things to come and your will to be the change and make the change. In today's era, where diversity and inclusion are being recognized as key drivers of success, the presence of women on corporate boards is not just a matter of equality, but a strategic imperative. Studies indicate that there is a positive correlation between gender diverse boards and financial performance. It also has been shown that diverse boards are less likely to engage in groupthink and more likely to challenge assumptions, thus reducing the risk of poor decision making. But above all, women directors contribute to a more inclusive corporate culture and serve as the best tools of role modeling and empowerment for other aspiring women. Flow Women Directors, the brainchild of our Flow National President Sudha Shivakumar, addresses the gender disparity prevalent in boardrooms across industries. It not only advocates for change, but actively works towards it by organizing workshops, seminars, training programs, mentoring sessions, and networking events across its India-wide ecosystem. The goal of this initiative is to create a pool of qualified women leaders who are ready to serve as directors. It also aims at providing a proactive platform towards creating a more diverse and inclusive business environment in India and promoting gender equality in leadership positions. As a GB member of the national team of Flow Women Directors Initiative, I feel proud and privileged to bring you the first of these events in Hyderabad. Each one of you here is capable of working wonders in the boardroom, and these series of events will definitely help you get there more confidently. I would like to extend a special welcome and deep gratitude to our guest speakers today who have stepped forward with genuine enthusiasm to share their wealth of knowledge and experience with us. As we move forward, let us recognize that the journey toward gender diversity in the boardroom is not just about quotas or ticking the boxes. Let's take firm steps to champion gender diversity at all levels of leadership, recognizing that it is not just the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do. Sir, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Usha. I now call upon Ms. Vansi Uppula, Head of Education Initiative Team, to introduce our guests.
Hello, everybody. An accomplished individual, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan. Mr. V. Ramakrishnan holds degrees in mechanical engineering and business management. He founded Organization Development Private Limited, ODPL, a respected consulting firm in Singapore. As the managing director, he leads ODPL in areas such as strategy, risk management, and marketing analysis. With a strong background in engineering, manufacturing, and marketing, Mr. Ram's journey began in his family business in India, where he managed 5 companies with over 600 employees. This hands on experience, combined with his international training and collaborations with multinational companies, has shaped him into a dynamic leader and consultant. He's skilled in coaching senior management, refining decision making processes, and achieving lasting results. His experience also includes serving as a director in various public and private companies, contributing to governance and board secretary. He's a dedicated educator, teaching institutional performances and creating customized programs for senior civil servants. Mr. Ram's expertise, gained from diverse experience, underscores his commitment to fostering high performance cooperations. Welcome to Flow Hyderabad, Mr. Ram. Bringing in 4 decades of experience in news, publishing, and printing, over 15 years of the Hindu's Board of Directors, Mr. Kasturi Balaji is a trusted consultant for print and production technology, advertising top Indian publishers. He has led at WAN Infra's board and World Printers Forum. He's also deeply involved in various trusts and boards contributing to health, arbitration, and foundations. A graduate from Loyola College and a holder in Management Studies Masters from Bombay University, Mr. Balaji has also shone as a cricketer representing esteemed institutions in the sport. Flow Hyderabad welcomes Mr. Balaji. Thank you.
It is with immense pleasure that I now invite our chairperson, Ms. Ritu Shah, our esteemed guest, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, Mr. K. Balaji, and our day chair, Ms. Usha Rani Mane, on the dais. Could I kindly request our chairperson, Ms. Ritu Shah, to felicitate Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, please? And Ms. Usha Rani Mane to felicitate Mr. K. Balaji. Thank you, Ms. Usha. I now invite our chairperson, Ms. Ritu Shah, to address the gathering.
A very good afternoon to all the ladies, gentlemen, esteemed guests, and flow members. Indra Nooyi said, leadership is hard to define and good leadership even harder. But if you can get people to follow you to the ends of the earth, you are a great leader. Today, I stand before you to address a topic that holds immense significance in the context of modern society and evolution of family structures, the role of women in family boards. Family boards have long been the cornerstone of decision making within many businesses and organizations, and the inclusion of women in these crucial roles is a step towards progress, equality, and improved governance. India's family businesses have woven themselves into the very essence of our society. Passed down through generations, these enterprises often encapsulate the dreams, aspiration, and shared history of families. They are the backbone of our economy, contributing significantly to growth, employment, and the overall socio-economic fabric. In a world of conglomerates and multinationals, the resilience and adaptability of family businesses stand as a testament to our cultural ethos. The representation of women in the decision making echelons of family businesses is not just an issue of equality, but a vital necessity for success and progress. At this core, this discussion is all about recognizing the untapped potential that women represent in shaping the strategic decision of family businesses. Flow is building on its rich legacy, creating platforms for women to excel and lead. We are honored and privileged to have with us today two distinguished expert speakers, Mr. V. Ramakrishnan founder and managing director of Organization Development, PTE Singapore, and Mr. K. Balaji, trustee of the Palkiwala Foundation. Their insights and vast experience will certainly illuminate our understanding of this vital subject. Before we delve into the topic and hear from our esteemed speakers, allow me to share a brief overview into the dynamic activities taking place at Flow Hyderabad. As a part of our Sustain Her goals, Flow Hyderabad partnered with Flow National, Government of Telangana, Aleep, Kove, Hyzia, and TIE Hyderabad to organize Adishri, a national conference on women entrepreneurship. The aim of the conference was to provide a comprehensive platform to discuss and bring forth the challenges faced by women entrepreneurs, promote and guide women entrepreneurship, especially for women and rural women. Flow past chairpersons Ms. Uma Chikrupati and Ms. Priyanka Ganeriwal were a part of the panel along with noted dignitaries spearheading the step forward towards women empowerment. As a part of our digital literacy initiative, Flow National has tied up with Google to bring the DigiPivot program, a platform designed to upskill women in digital marketing. After a rigorous selection process, the cohort goes through an intensive online program held by senior faculty from ISB and mentors from Google, HUL, and Avatar. We are very excited to announce that after the selection process, which included numerous applications from both Flow and non-Flow, 7 Flow members from across chapters have been selected for the upcoming cohort. And it's a good news, friends. We are also delighted that 3 of those members amongst the 7 Flow members are from Hyderabad chapter. Shilpa Raju, Riddhi Mehta, and Sheetal Nahata. We extend our heartiest congratulations to all the selected members and wish them all the best always. Now, getting back to the session, as we embark on this exploration of women's role in family boards, I invite you all to open your minds to the possibilities that lie ahead. With organizations like Flow leading the way, let us envision a future where our businesses thrive, not only through innovation and profit, but also through an inclusive and equitable approach to leadership. Together, with the guidance and of experts like Mr. Ramakrishna and Mr. Balaji, we can turn this vision into a reality. Together, we can write a new chapter in the history of our businesses, families, and nation. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for having Balaji and me over. Getting down straight to the nitty-gritty of it, we are going to share experiences that we have made individually and collectively over the last 50 years. Balaji and I have been classmates since grade 5. And we have stayed together through these many years, had some many enriching discussions. And what was not mentioned in the introduction, Balaji is also an outstanding sportsman. He has played Ranji Trophy and many things for Tamil Nadu. And we have had a very joyous relationship, more so because his father, Mr. Kasturi, was a phenomenal person, and we have had hours and hours of discussion on governance. And what I'm saying is this, what I'm going to tell you is experiential. You're not going to get it in a textbook other than the book that I have written on governance with my erstwhile chairman, Professor Bob Garrett. My association with governance started in my family business, and my experience was terrible. And over the years, as I focused on performance, I met a gentleman called Bob Garrett, who wrote a phenomenal book, that's why I prefer the column mic, this keep whooping all the time. They don't have a column mic, doesn't matter. The issue was very clear. He wrote a phenomenal book called Fish Rots from the Head. I don't like it, ma'am. I don't like to go to the podium, right? I feel constrained. Governance should not be constrained. It should be free form, right? Bob wrote this book, Fish Rots from the Head. He came across my work on measuring board performance because my mantra is simple. If it's measured, it can be done. What cannot be measured cannot be done. And you know what? Boards hate being measured, right? In fact, the dashboard that I developed for boards has been recommended by the World Bank, ADB, and others as well. So it's hardcore numbers that I use in a different context. It's not an MIS or something. It's a very different approach. And Bob was kind enough to introduce me to all the pitamahas of corporate governance. Primary being Adrian Cadbury, with whom I have had some delightful discussions. It got a bit more raucous after the third whiskey, but we had some good fun. Hempel, Green, the Institute of Directors in UK. We have had many, many enlightening discussions in England, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, all over the place. In 2004-05, Bob and I delivered a series of lectures for CIA across India. And then what happened? Nobody wanted governance. I'm still telling you, nobody wants governance, and I'm going to show you how difficult it is. It's not a formula. It's not a piece of cake. Balaji and I have been through the grind in our family businesses. We have come through it. And what I've done is a compilation. You are going to get the benefits of a 40-hour workshop in 2 hours. It's going to be intense. It's going to be dense. It's going to be challenging. But anytime you feel like asking a question, please stop and ask the question. Because if you miss the thread, you're not going to catch the whole thread. Because in some ways, when we got time restrained, we have cut and chopped. It's not a smooth flow that we would normally like to deliver in a lecture. I'm not complaining, but we have to live with reality that 2.5 hours is 2.5 hours, and we'd like to maintain time, right? So please feel free and talk to us when you want to. Right? It's a very interesting picture. What catches your attention in this picture? What catches your attention? Pardon? The glow of the lamp? The shadow. Right. Will the shadow be there if that light is not protected? That's your job as a director. And if you're a woman director, you have the ability to nurture, which men do not have. In any case, if men have a habit of nurturing, they're called pansies. So be careful with them. Right? Okay. So this picture was actually painted by the person when he saw his daughter coming out on Deepavali day. He saw her, made her stand there for 2 hours and painted this picture. To me, it's very evocative of womanhood, and I've used it because you have the ability to cast a very bright and a very good shadow. You can also cause great damage. Let me tell you, being blunt, third generation, when the women come into the business, has been the cause of a lot of difficulties within the business. It's a different reason. I'm not complaining. I'm not judgmental saying it's good or bad. I worked with my mother as a director. I worked with my sister as a director. I worked with a number of women as a director. I have no issues working with women. But please remember this picture. You have the potential to do great good, but you also have the potential to do damage. You need to be aware of this. If I don't tell you this, I'm not being honest to myself. I'm not again blaming women. Men can be equally damaging, if not more, but that's a different issue altogether. That's not what you're talking about today. Right? Unfortunately, the systems are incompatible, so I'm not able to use my... Right? Now, I'm a wildlife photographer, so I love using pictures of tigers, right? Now, what I really want to say is governance and direction is often mixed up. The two are not the same. Governance is how the board works. Direction is a compass. Governance is a GPS. What's the difference between a compass and a GPS? Any takers? We don't drive, sir. Only our driver takes us there, is it? Direction. So what do you want to be as a director? A GPS or a compass? You'd rather be the GPS. But GPS requires a number. Yeah, but with the GPS you can get the direction, no? You think the GPS. How many satellites are required in space to get one GPS going? If you want to be a GPS, it behooves you to learn that. Okay. So we'll be talking about the GPS part of it. See, in the outline, I'm going to talk earlier. If I had time, I would have given you some case studies. And my method of doing case studies, when I teach public policy and corporate governance, which I've been doing in Singapore from 2004, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, I use case studies before I start the session, because that kind of softens you up to understand what is required. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'll talk about the generic principles of governance. That's a hard session. Then we look at the basic architecture of family businesses, which is very different. And you will understand that the governance practices that one recommends for corporates has no correlation to what is required by families. So everything you get out there is not about families. It's about how corporate should be done, right? Balaji will speak about certain issues there. We'll apply the principles of governance to family boards. The real crux is going to be defining family and family businesses, managing conflicts and challenges in family businesses, challenges women face, and succession planning. Measuring board and director performance, we won't have the time, and we won't have a case study, which is a wonderful case study about stewardship with the Ayala family. So this will be the broad construct. Is there anything else you want to know? How many of you are on boards now? A few. How many in family boards? How many in public boards? Right. How many in audit committee or risk committee chairs? Okay, only one, two. Good. So what is it that you really want to know today? Pardon? Seems good enough? Right. I shall talk to you when your head is spinning at 5:30 in the evening. Right? I'll do that. I'll do my best. Anytime you feel like adding something, please let us know. If it's within our ken, we will do it. I want you to answer this question. If you had a word director on your business card, but you're not a member of the board of any organization, do you have the same liabilities as a board member? I'm getting binary answers. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, you have the same liabilities, except in the case of multinationals where they have a position designated as director, which is below the vice president. That's a position description which is not related to that. Be careful. And I'll tell you why. Brutally honest. Most of family members, including I, we get our identity. Director of this company cards. We do not have identity, especially it's a borrowed identity, it's a reflected identity. It's that lamp. We have not earned it. We have been given that. It's brutal, but it's factual. Think about your own way. Madam, I'm sorry, I'm being blunt. I'm not going to mince words. Because our identity comes from those two letters there. If I'm a director of a limited company, am I covered as far as my personal liabilities are concerned? No. One of the first things you have to do when you get onto a board is ask the board to get insurance for directorial liability. And it's very expensive. It's not cheap. Now, is it applying to private company? Of course. Private company, the only difference is you're limited by the extent of your shareholding. There's no other difference. The accountabilities are the same. We will cover that now. Do non-executive independent directors have fewer responsibilities than an executive director? No. A director is a director is a director. Whether you're man, woman, I won't go into other genders, so let's leave it at that. Independent director, managing director, non-independent executive, whatever shade you call it, you have the same liabilities. If you have sat in a board meeting and your name has been recorded in the minutes, you are liable. And you know what? You've heard of key management personnel, KMPs, which is now in public companies, you have to designate who are the key people in your organization. If you are a KMP, which could be the CEO, the CFO, the CXO, the head of HR, etc., 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 if your name is in the minutes of the meeting, you are also liable for that. You're not going anywhere. Please understand, getting on board is fun, but staying on a board is very onerous. It's not easy. In a limited liability company, is the primary duty of a director to the shareholders or to themselves? Now we come to the issue. Right? So what makes you as a family member a special shareholder? Nothing. Who issues the shares? The company. You have nothing. You may own 90% of the company in a public company, 75% in India. But there's nothing called a family business company. You are a shareholder with the same rights as a guy who holds one share. With the same liabilities as a guy who holds one share. So please be clear about it. The true fact is there's nothing called a family managed business or a family owned and managed business. Right? The family may own shares, but but that doesn't mean you own the company. Please be clear about it. You cannot do whatever you want to do. Oh, private limited, yeah. Whatever applies to a public company, sooner than later the nail is going to be driven into the private sector thing as well. And SEBI is tightening it, and Company Law Board is following suit. Ind AS, the new accounting standard, is very tough, whether you're a private or a public limited company. So it's not going to be a cakewalk. I don't have a formula to solve the problem, but your prime duty as a shareholder is to the company, not to the family. As a director. If you're advising and working with the board, either as a senior manager or a consultant, do you avoid directorial liability? No. If your name figures in the minutes as having been present, you are a party to the decision and hence liable. Right? That is why even when the auditor is called in, it is outside of the board meeting. Specifically when they have views and approvals, they are asked to come in and the chairman makes a remark. I am now inviting the auditor to be present. He presents what he has to do. We say, thank you very much. Now get the gone. You can go. So it gets very, very tight. And these are elements which are not written in any book. This is all things that we have worked on and got hammered in the past. Our directors of state-owned organizations, including agencies and parastatals. Parastatals are our PSUs. Exempt from normal directorial responsibilities? No. Identical. So what is the meaning I'm telling you? Other than a partnership company, if you're a private limited company or a public limited company or a limited liability company, governance demands are the I want to hear it louder. Same, yes. So please disabuse yourself. Second, if you're a man or a woman director, your liabilities are the same. And what are your benefits? Limited to what other directors get and limited to what other shareholders get. Right? Now this gets very complex. It's not that easy. I'll cover that now. Now we are going to be talking solely about closely held public limited companies. We are not talking about the proprietorship and LLCs because that opens up different dimensions. Just for clarity to this group, I am assuming that if you want to get onto a board, it's a public company that you want to get onto. If you want to get onto your private company, please listen to this, apply the same principles, except that your liabilities are limited to your shareholding. What does governance mean? What does governance mean? It comes from the same word, root verb, Greek verb, as cybernetics. It's the same word, Kubernetes. It's a Greek word. And what does Kubernetes mean? Can somebody read it out? Connectedness and feedback. When you're guiding a boat, what do you want? Hand on the tiller. You're connected to the movement. And if the water is rough, you get the feedback. That is what governance is about. So you have to connect. You have to get feedback. You know, Bob used to put it very nicely. He says the days of turn up, put up, and shut up are gone. You know what that means? When Margaret Thatcher initiated the study of governance by Adrian Cadbury, 92% of directors sat on each other's boards. Okay, 92%. You sit on my board, I sit on your board. You turn up, you put up with the muck I'm giving you, and you shut up. Take your director's fee, have a drink and a dinner, and get out. That's gone. If as an independent director or a director, you have an issue and you do not raise it in the board meeting, it is implicit acceptance of what has been decided. So put up, shut up, turn up is gone. You have to be accountable. You have to use your judgment. You have to exercise your honesty and integrity to serve whom? Your family or the company? Remember that. I'm going to keep hammering that again and again and again and again. Right? It's a system for directing and controlling an enterprise. It's a system for, what is direction? What's the difference between direction and leadership? Why do we assume that directors are also leaders? No. Direction is what? Please go there. Leadership is what? Come on, come behind my coattails. I'm leading you there. How many of you are prepared as family members, prepared to lead out in the muck that the people face, whether it's the customers or suppliers? Right? Right. Not too many. Well, if you're doing it, it's brave. It's a brave new world. But leadership, again, everybody uses leadership, governance, directorship is all interchangeable. Sorry. English is a wonderful word. It has got the same meaning for many words, but it also has many words for the same meaning. So let's be careful about it. Governance is governance, direction is direction, leadership is leadership. Right? It means how a company's values are created and upheld. Can a company take on the values of the family? Yeah, yes. What happens if the founder dies and the son doesn't like the founder? Trouble, big trouble. Right? So, understanding the values that founded the company is extremely important, and enshrining it is extremely. You will find that all companies that have endured 50, 60, 70, 80 years, they have a value system. Whether it is to public service, whether it is to integrity, whether it is to paying taxes, whether it is to treating their employees, they have a value system that's embedded in the culture. Right? How you decide what course, you have to be the GPS the company should take. It's not enough to say you're going to make a profit. Please, also second thing, when you're talking governance, don't talk profit. Do you require air to breathe? So why do you say that air is special? Profit is like air. It's a fundamental necessity for any business. It's absolute nonsense to talk about directors focusing on profit. If you cannot deliver a profit, don't be a director. You have run the company into the ground. I will explain what you need to do. I'm not just going to condemn. So profit, profitability, these are all trivial accounting terms which the big 4, big 5, big 6, big 8 like to introduce. If you don't make a profit, why are you in business? Why are you in business? Right? But there's something called value. I'll explain what that also is now. Right? It's very necessary to understand that. So that is what you're going to create. What is that word in blue? Sustained? What does sustained mean? What does stakeholder mean? What is value? I take my jewels to the jeweler and find out what that value is. I take my shares to the stockbroker and find out what my value is. No. It's a hard-edged number. How many of you have heard of economic value added? Right. What is economic value added? If you were to borrow money from a bank at 10% and you have to give it to your brother or sister or father on loan, how much will you charge? 9% or 11%? Right? Less? Madam, I'll give me 10 lakhs, please. I'll give it to you. Right? You have a, when you take money on loan, there's a cost of capital. There's a cost for managing it. Almost always, if you're getting a 10% and your inflation rate is 4%, you have to generate a profit of at least 14%. At least. If you have to increase value, there are complex calculations which I'll explain. It is at least 15 to 16%. Right? Economic value is the extra 5 or 6% that you need to run the business. If you don't have that profit, you cannot invest in that business. It's dead. So the value that you create is a very technical term, and it has to be done. It's not about return on capital employed and all that. That's all rubbish. That's all absolute rubbish. I know how to fudge inventory. I know how to fudge receivables. I know how to fudge payables. All that I can tell you. In fact, in Indonesia, when we were doing projects, we used to have McKinsey in the room. We'll talk to him. He'll tell us over, hey, this number doesn't look good. When finance team used to be in the next door, I used to go and, hey, Shiv, isko thoda badal do yaar. Right? Kya karne ka hisab? Arey, jo bhi karo, humko ye number chahiye. It came out of an Excel spreadsheet. So value creation cannot come out of an Excel spreadsheet. It's very, very detailed work, understanding the business, the flow of the business, the deliverables in the business, and so on. Now, let me get into a little bit more detail. I'll give you a working definition. Governance issues concern effectiveness and accountability. What is effectiveness? What's the difference between effectiveness and efficiency? Right. Try, keep trying, keep thinking. Doesn't matter if you make a mistake. We are here to learn. Right? You renew only if you learn. Right? No. It's not about organization. Let's look at the plain definition of effectiveness. I like one-liners. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Efficiency is doing things right. As a director, is your job to make the company effective or efficient? Can you be effective without being efficient? So you see, efficiency is implicit. Right? I see a smile on your face. Why? You're suddenly realizing how simple it is it? Don't believe me. It is simple. Right? Accountability. What's the difference between accountability and responsibility? As a director, are you accountable or responsible? So who's responsible? You can't be both. You can't be Ekamata, Ehapita all at the same time. No? You can't be Pita and Mata at the same time. You have to be one or the other. No, actually this raises a huge conflict. English is a fantastic language. The ability to account for the resources given to you is accountability. The ability to respond how these resources are deployed is responsibility. Okay? Now, you are the HR director and you're also head of HR. So can you be accountable and responsible at the same time? You can't. If you are on the board, don't take a managerial position. If you are on the board as a director, you cannot take an operational managerial position in the company. It is a conflict of interest. Yeah? People don't like it? Okay, HR personnel goofs up and fires 3 people at the wrong time. Are you going to sit on the board and say, I did wrong, what are you going to do to correct it? Who's going to correct you? Who's going to oversee what you're doing? Yes, it is easier said than done. That is why you're doing both together, but you're doing it wrong. Right? It is easier said than done because it gives you power. Let me ask you another follow-up question. If your manager comes to work 2 hours late, what will you do? If you turn up 2 hours late as a manager, forgiven, no? No, I used to have huge arguments with my mother and sister on this. Huge arguments. No, you want to, if you want, I'm not objecting to being anything. But if we want the discipline from our managers, see, I had a rule when I was running the factory. Coming to work at 8 o'clock is discipline. Going to work, going away at 5 o'clock is a career limiting move. Career limiting move. That means don't do it. So you are a director. You will come and go as you please. You are also a manager. You will come and go as you please. Don't your other people have the same pressures of weddings, of deaths, of births? So what makes you different? Just because...
There has to be a hierarchy above you also, right? Though you're the director, if you're the head of HR, you will have your VP, you will have your CEO.
I'm talking about the highest position you have in HR. Right? You want, if you're on the board, don't run that function. See, you're sitting right there at the top. Whether you're called VP or, let's face it, you may be called manager, but if there's a VP above you, you are the VP. Right? So, the point I'm trying to make is, if you want to do a dual role, there's a tremendous amount of discipline that's required. Tremendous amount of acceptance of the fact that you cannot do what you please, simply because it's a family company. You know why? There's nothing called a family company. At least in public spaces. Right? So as Adrian Cadbury put it, accountability combined with effectiveness can be a spur. Governance is a system by which organizations are directed. I will speak to you about the roles, the duties, and the tasks of directors. I'll speak about that in a few minutes. It's good to understand that. The relationship. This is the American view, Bob Monk's. It's a relationship. It's a one-to-many relationship. It's not a many-to-one. As the apex body, you may be director HR. you're also a director of the company. So you have multiple responsibilities. For example, you go on a trip and there is an error in your travel bill. Horrible thought, no? Some junior clerk coming and telling you, madam, thoda addition. This is not allowed with the company rules. It happens, right? It happens all the time, right? So you have a huge responsibility when you go up the ladder. I want somebody at the back to read the first paragraph. Who's going to take the challenge? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi. Corporate governance is concerned with the way corporate entities are governed as distinct from the way businesses within those companies are managed.
Who would like to explain that to me? Who would like to explain that? Suddenly the hands all go down, hold held tight, arms. Go ahead. What happens if you make a mistake? I'm not going to kill you. Certainly not. Who wants to explain that? It's exactly what I've said. The business, the way you manage the business is not the way you directly govern it. It's a difference. Who wants to read the second paragraph? See, one way or the other, I'll catch all of you. Others will come sit behind you, give you a dig and say, read. Okay, right. See, that's why I'm such a mobile person, this keeps going around, and I also have a bad wrist. So, governing a business is different from the way you manage a business. Right? The two are not interchangeable. And the two are connected, yes. Therefore, you cannot be a manager and a governor or a director, as the saying goes. That's what I've been trying to explain as a regulator, right? Second paragraph. Who would like to read that?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah.
Corporate governance address those issues facing board of directors, such as their interactions with the top managements and relationship with the owners and other interested in the affairs of the company, including creditors, debt financiers, analysts, audit and corporate regulators.
Right. This is fairly straightforward. That essentially, if you're a director, you should be able to interact with a whole host of people. Right? If the taxman asks you a question, you have to answer it. If the auditor asks you a question, you can't say, I don't know. It behooves you to answer that. You have to be aware. So again, I repeat, it's not turn up, put up, and shut up. There's a lot of detailed work. In what areas? In understanding who all? Creditors, financiers, analysts, auditors, and regulators. And the list goes on. Right? And the last paragraph, who wants to read it for me? Yeah, go ahead.
Concern about corporate performance through involvement with strategy formulation and policy making, and corporate conformance through management supervision and accountability to its stakeholders falls into the field of governance.
Right. All this was written by the man who coined the word corporate governance, Bob Tricker, a old rascally old man. But understand this paragraph, it's fully loaded. What is the job of a director? Strategy formulation and? Is it about policy implementation or policy making? Right. So please understand, if you are also a policy maker and you go as a manager and you want to be a policy implementer, there is an inherent conflict of interest, right? So management, supervision, accountability, we have covered enough, so I will leave it at that. So summary, directors are persons appointed to direct and supervise the affairs of a company. They are not there to run the company. You're there to supervise, right? The company's business is consigned in the hands of the directors. Yes, you're all powerful. They wield supreme executive authority. And in practice, it's the board of directors that looks after the management and protects the interests of the stakeholders of the company. Now, this leads to a very interesting aspect of independent directors. What is the primary role of an independent director? Protect minority stakeholders. Who's a minority stakeholder? Now, let us assume that there are a family of 4 brothers and 3 brothers have bought out all these stakes and the youngest brother has only a small stake. He still has to be protected in law, right? And that's the role of independent directors. Right. Now, when you do all these things, 3 concepts I'd like to leave with you. What is the value proposition that you as a company offer to your stakeholders and all those nice people we mentioned? You need to understand value propositions. When you're marketing, the critical concept is the concept of value proposition. We use it loosely. It's an 8-cornered matrix which has to be analyzed. And do you think the value proposition remains the same? My favorite question. How many dhotis did grandfather have in his cupboard? Now answer that, you'll find how ridiculous it is. 4. 1 for occasions, 1 for family functions, 2 for regular use, right? How many white pants and trousers did dad have, a shirt have in his cabinet? 10 maybe? I won't ask about you, but I'll ask about your children. How many t-shirts do they have in the cabinet? Right. That's value migration. That's value migration. It is happening with, I see in some guests, and I go as a guest, I see something, sometimes it happens in toothbrushes. A person has 4 or 5 toothbrushes. You have 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 watches. You have multiple footwear. You have multiple fashion jewelry. Nothing wrong with it. I'm not being critical. But that's the migration. And if you sit in a boardroom, turn up, put up and shut up, do you think you're going to understand this? No way. No way you're going to understand it. Right? You may say, I've been in this business 30 years. You know what my answer is? Your experience is 1 into 30 years. The first 1 year experience, you're repeating 30 times. You're not learning. It's no evolution, that's right. No renewal, more than evolution. Evolution is something that you grow as, but you need to have a renewal and understanding of your business. Because the same business, what it delivered 20 years ago is not going to be material 5 years from now. Right? That's a key role. That is what strategy formulation is about. Strategy is not about trying to go around saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a 10 crore company. That's all rubbish. It's value proposition. But it's not enough to understand a value proposition. You have to capture it, no? That's what your brand building is about. That's what your marketing strategies are about. That is what about measuring sales performance is about. That's what about. And then what's the last and the most difficult part? You've captured it. What do you do after that? Pray? Or you're going to do something different? You've got to deliver it, no? Right? This is where the rubber meets the road. First 2 consultants can help you. Delivery, nobody can help you. Right? So the 3 have to move closer together. There's something called a Venn diagram in mathematics. I won't get into it because it may give people heebie-jeebies. But what is it? What are the value propositions that you need to understand? People who give you money, providers of finance, customers, suppliers, employees, society and environment. This is something that we are waking up to now. But it's a very traditional requirement, which all our ancient business practices ensured. Our generation is rediscovering it. And one of my jokes about many businesses is they misspell customers. You know what they call them? Kasht Amar. It becomes a difficult one to work with. So we need to understand. So its value proposition is not just one entity. It is a whole series. And this keeps moving all the time. What happened after COVID? Is it the same demands that happened before COVID? It has changed dramatically, no? How ready are we for it? How ready? One of the decisions we took in one of the boards, we said post-COVID, you will not have sale of 2-wheelers. You will have sale of second-hand vehicles. And it was right. Right? Even then we said, what after second-hand vehicles? You'll find the D segment, that's the Altos and stuff growing, and that's what's happening. Because that's what gets you ready. Because in manufacturing for value delivery, do you go there, turn a switch and change the delivery? Or is it a whole sequence of events that you need to go through? So that is what strategy formulation is. That's what thinking ahead is. That's performance governance. This is what I really pioneered 25 years ago, and this is what is included in IOD and other documents. Now, what is performance? If you have to deliver performance, you have to give satisfaction in excess of expectations. Right? So, if you don't know expectations, how are you going to perform? Simple, no? You need to understand the value propositions. That's plain and simple as that. Now, this is a very easy equation, but a very difficult one. To do this, the expectations, what do the owners want? Who's the owner? A steward, investor, shareholder, a number of definitions are possible. I'll explain steward towards the close if I have the time. Provide a sense of purpose, a vision, a mission. How many of your companies have a purpose statement? What is it? Not a vision statement. No, that's, you put it up in the toilet, you put it up in the restroom, you put it up in the canteen. But then unfortunately my directors, I don't know what it is about. That's not a vision statement. That's not a mission statement. You need to have a purpose statement. Purpose statement is simple. Why do you exist? Vision is what you're going to deliver endlessly over the next horizon, which could be 20 years, 30 years, this is rolling. And a mission is what you're going to deliver in the next day, what value you're going to deliver in the next 18 months. So unless you understand your purpose, there's no point having a vision or mission. It's only a paper tiger. Can we see any purpose statement? Madam, give me 4 hours and I'll show you all of that. Right? Pardon? I understand. Then these things take time, ma'am. When I said 4 hours, I mean 4 hours. You know, you're not going to get everything packaged so that you can take away and do what you have not done for the last 20 years. Right? It's a very substantial, I have everything. I can start off. But then I'll have to stop here because you'll get into questioning there. Okay, simple one. What is Microsoft's purpose statement? A computer on every desk. A computer on every desk. That was his purpose statement. Yeah. No. That's probably the easiest of the examples. So you have to, people who invest time and directors have a different requirement, right? So people who invest capital, time and energy have higher expectations. But then, please remember, ethics is implicit in governance. Is this a valid example about selling spurious medicines? You've been seeing what's happening in India, Indian exports, right? In governance, ethics is paramount. You can have GMP, good manufacturing practices. You can have ISO 9000, QS 19000, 14000, ISO 14000. At the end of the day, one of the things I do before I accept a consulting assignment, I always request to use the washroom. So the people take me to the managing director's washroom. I said, no, I want to go to the worker's toilet. That tells me what your governance is. That tells me how honest you are. Whether you're serious about it. Right? Simple thing. In fact, when I walk into a factory, what I do when I go to the door is, I always walk along the edge and see how much dust there is. How much dust there is. If I walk along that wall, I'll scrape it along and see how much dust there is. That tells me the details to which you're going. Right? No point polishing the windows because a guest is coming and putting up all the paperwork nicely to see it. Right? That's immaterial. The details is where the devil is. Right? Now, simply put, if you want to create a different world, you cannot be done by indifferent people. Right? Directors set direction. People lead and manage change. Right? It's a very interesting definition here. What's the difference between transformation and change? Okay, you've got a point, explore it further. Somebody had a good laugh behind, why don't you share your view? Very simple. Transformation is permanent, change is reversible. Right? I can convert cold water into hot water, into steam, into ice and reverse it. But a butterfly, once it comes out of a caterpillar, cannot become a caterpillar again. Right? So now, strategically, do you want to transform or do you want to change? Right? You will not succeed because the value proposition is transforming. No. Change is not ongoing. Change is, you're morphing. It is subtle, but it's reflected in the way you transform. I mean, he and I were just discussing. It's not the end result. It's only an intermediate step. Your end result is the value creation for your stakeholders. You are not paid to transform the company. You are paid to deliver stakeholder value. You are transforming to ensure that you give sustained stakeholder value. That's all. No. No, it's not easier to change. It's a loose excuse to say it's easier to change, and let me tell you, change will never happen. Right? I'll tell you why. To be honest, if you want to change, your brother-in-law will not want it. If he wants it, your brother will not want it. If he wants it, your sister-in-law will not want it. This is the truth about family businesses. We don't want to accept it. If change is reversible, please understand that. It is reversible. So the moment you take the pressure and foot off the accelerator, the change will reverse. Whereas when you transform, an ugly duckling like a caterpillar has become a beautiful butterfly. Right? So aim for transformation. Don't aim for intermediate steps. Madam, family business, as I've already told you, is no exception. It's a business. No, it's not an ideal situation. It's a minimum situation. It's not the ideal. It's a minimal. Right? It's a minimal. Right? This change management, another thing I'm very upset with CAII is they promoted change management. What change management? When they brought it into India, the manufacturing sector in India was in such terrible shape. We didn't have to change. We had to transform. Even today, let me give you a simple statistic. It's very difficult to explain. You know what's the cost of quality in India? That is the total revenue loss because of inadequate quality in management, in systems, in product, in processes, in all combined. You know what the average in India is? You can relate it to your business, whether you're making jewelry, whether you're selling food, whatever. It is 30%. You know what's it in Japan? 5%. Cost of quality. Therefore, see, they've called it cost of lost quality. That's a terrible mistake that even Tarun made. I had a long argument with it. It's not a question of lost quality. Quality is absolute. Right? I don't have to sell a 2 crore car to any guy who is driving a motorcycle. That guy, that cost of quality is implicit. I will never buy a European car. I have worked in Germany. I have worked within Mercedes-Benz as a serviceman. I have worked within BMW. I will never buy a European car. Never. Right? Last 30 years, I've driven a Japanese car. Right? And two very lovely Indian cars. A Nano and a Gypsy. Right? Both excellent. Right? So you have to be aware and not, if you want to make a change, you have to be indifferent. And leadership is not about size. Right? In other words, this child is leading despite all the bull. Huh? Right. Now, what are the 3 pillars of governance? This is a very, very important slide. Accountability as compared to responsibility. I have already explained that to you. As directors, as board members, your job is to be accountable. Integrity and probity. This is called honesty. No, it's not honesty. Nobody pays you to be dishonest. Integrity is precisely this issue where she pointed out, I can see I need the change, but I'm not able to convince it's the change. If I had to see the change, you have to make it happen. And I'm not talking theory here. When my family business said no, I said, thank you very much, you run it, I'm getting out. I lost a lot of money. Balaji knows the whole history. But that's not so material. The material thing is you have the courage of your convictions. That's what integrity requires. Transparency. Transparency does not mean going around talking about everything that happens in the boardroom with your manager. Right? Any unmarried woman here? Okay, we'll forgive you. Right? The only issue is transparency does not mean that the master bedroom door is made of glass. There are certain things that have to be kept within the boardroom. Much of it is mandated. I'm asked this question. If I go home and my husband asks me what happened in the board meeting, what should I do? What will you do? What will you do if your husband asks you what happened in the board meeting? Pardon? Simple answer, just shut up. Don't tell. You are working for the company, not for your husband. Right? See, again, how small things are you keep reinforcing, which is fundamentally essential. My wife asks me, what happened today? I said, good luck, tomorrow I'll get my sitting fees, that's all. Right? So these are the three pillars of governance. This is what the board has to enshrine. Now, accountability, I mentioned about effective, I mentioned about steering. So I'm now asking you the question, effective in steering, to whom and for what? That's the question you have to answer. Probity, to whom and why? And transparency, to whom and when? These are the basic questions. So again, please understand, I'm taking a concept and trying to operationalize it here. Accountable to whom for what? Accountable to your stakeholders for sustained value creation. That's what it is. Quality governance creates wealth. It's about steering, it's not about rowing. Kubernetes, yeah. Now, let's come to the next phase of this. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Am I being too aggressive? Am I being too intrusive? And if you think I'm talking nonsense, please say so. We'll also learn. Right? This is the purpose I spoke about. What is the purpose? Who wants to read about the purpose? Why doesn't this table read? This table is very quiet. Why don't you read it out for me? You? Yeah, I can give you the mic. The mic's here in front of you. No passing the buck. Directors don't pass the buck. Please read it out.
The key purpose of the board is to ensure the company's prosperity by collectively directing the company's affairs whilst meeting the appropriate interests of its shareholders and relevant stakeholders.
Have I explained this in depth in the last half an hour? 45 minutes? Is this clear? This is why a company exists. This is why the company exists. You don't have a choice. The purpose statement that you make has to meet all of this. Right? So it's a guiding principle. You don't have a choice. Right? Role of the board. Is it to govern or to rule? Does Mr. Modi govern India or rule India? Yeah, but why do we talk about the ruling BJP? They are not ruling, they are governing BJP. Right? Exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Rulement of India. Not a kingdom. It's not a kingdom. So governance, you have to believe, even within our own society, we use this word loosely and say the ruling party. Nationalistic party. Okay? Tell me which country has a non-nationalistic leader here? Right? See, these are all loose terms. We cannot use this in governance. Right? It's a committed family board. What's a committed family board? Right? All the management theory says get commitment from your directors. Here you have a committed family board and you say they're committed. What nonsense. Right? So you govern. You do not rule. That's a very fundamental concept we need to ingrain in ourselves. Right? While that brings up the 10 duties of the director. Again, this slide itself is about 1.5 hours to discuss. Pardon me, I won't have the time for that. But let's take to the second one, right? Why doesn't the table number 2, somebody read it out for me. What is the number 2 line? No, number 2. I catch people when they look at cell phones, you know. It doesn't matter, any one of them, it's between them. What is the element in blue in item 2?
Upholding primary purpose.
Upholding primary purpose. Is it for the family or for the business?
Business.
So your duty is upholding the primary purpose. And now you understand why I said define your purpose. Right? What is number 4? Is to whom? Company. Is that clear? Is that a shift in thinking now before you walked in and after you walked in? Right? Primary purpose is to the company. What is number 8? Right. Now this is extremely important in family businesses because as you go forward, when you have 2 or 3 people in the second generation, and that becomes 12 people in the next generation. We will discuss these issues as well. All 12 may not be equally competent. All 12 may not have equal shareholding, because one uncle may have had 2 children, another uncle may have had 5 children, so on and so forth. Therefore, protecting minority rights, more so if they are within the family, is extremely vital. In Coimbatore, Coimbatore is a very, very high-end governance place. So one of the chairmen asked his sons, when they wanted to divvy up the properties, sons and daughters, he says, I have only one question. When your children got married, do you want all to get married at the same level of elegance? Or if there's a poorer cousin, the marriage should not be as grand. The children went away and broke up the company, and I can tell you each one of the grandchildren have magnificent weddings, even if the father or the mother is not that well provided for. Simple question, I'll talk about this later. This is extremely important because no independent director can norm what the family stakeholder has to do, because much of it is done offline, and I'll show you why it's done offline also. And what's the last one? Right. Social responsibility is not CSR. CSR is rubbish. It's good, it's providing a lot of money. I'm on the CSR chairman, chair a couple of CSR committees. But I think it's what the government could not do for 60 years, they have dumped it on corporates. I'm paying taxes so that you do social work, not give freebies. Right? If you stop the freebies, you can do enough of CSR in the country. But social responsibility cannot be mandated. It is something that you do voluntarily. But let me add a caveat here. If you're sitting in Hyderabad, will you do social responsibility in Himachal Pradesh? Why? The purpose of your company is to grow the company's business. So any CSR or social work that you do should benefit in and around the environment that you survive in, you thrive in. Right? You may want to give something to the Prime Minister's flood relief fund. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the social relevance. If you want to start a school, are you going to start it in Simla? Nice place, Soul and Whiskey is close by. But nothing more. So CSR, people get a mistaken relief. CSR is anything and everything. Hey Balaji, give me 2 lakhs of CSR. That's not CSR. CSR, even by government law, has to have a purpose. It has to have a benefit. It has to be reported. It has to be shown the number of beneficiaries, what you've committed, what you've done. It's a very detailed process. So social responsibility is, broadly speaking, first around your company, then around the areas that you thrive and work in, the community. The community. Then you can expand it. If you make billions like, what do you call it? Mukesh Ambani does, he can spread it around. But most of us who are in the sub 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore business have limited social connects, and let's help our communities. Let's not pretend to be do-gooders for the world. So these 10 duties are balanced by 4 tasks. What is the first one? Strategic thinking. I've explained enough about strategic thinking. Please understand, I'm not saying strategic planning. I'm saying strategic thinking. Thinking you start at 8 o'clock and stop at 5 o'clock, or do it from March to April? It's an ongoing process, and that's the subject matter of all board discussions. That has to be the subject matter of all board discussions, one way or the other. In many boards, it's called the rhythm of the board. 2 meetings a year we devote. One is for strategic formulation, the other is for strategic outcome review. Right? It's a rhythm, right, that you establish so that the board is constantly up to date on what's happening in the market. I use the word outcomes. What's the difference between an outcome and an output? Pardon? Okay. I can't argue with that. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to win the tournament or win the match? Come on, ma'am. Yeah, that's an output, that's an activity. Setting your goal for winning the tournament is the outcome that you determine. Similarly, delivering sustained stakeholder value, and this has to be micro detailed because supplier wants it differently. For example, do you want to pay your MSME suppliers in 45 days or 35 days? No, government norms it now. Why 45 days? If you have sufficient cash flow, why not in 37 days? You talk about social service and saying, I'm spending 5 lakhs here. Why don't you do social service to the small fellow who's struggling to pay his salary? You see how these things get mixed up. I'm not being critical of you. I'm just raising, these are all common issues that one faces, right? So the outcomes that you have to deliver to each one of your constituents is something that you need to understand. And as value migration suggests, it goes on changing. In COVID, what did we do? We paid the supplies in advance, right? Why did you pay it in advance? Because that was a social necessity. It was a business necessity. So you need to understand that outcomes is what board is responsible for. You want to do an activity? Give it to your managers. Don't go there at 10 o'clock and tell him he didn't turn up for work at 8 o'clock, okay? Second one. What is the second one? Right. Can you have policy without a strategy? Can you have policy without a strategy? You can't. Be comfortable. Yes, you can't. Therefore, when strategy changes, right, how many of your companies are policy driven? I'm not talking about parking policy and leave travel policy. I'm talking about more substantial product development policies, market development policies, so on and so forth. I'm not being facetious. Everybody will have a parking policy. Everybody will have a leave travel policy. But how many of you will have a payment policy and a credit and debtor and management? What's your policy on that? What is your CSR policy? Right? So strategy derives and is implemented through the policy statement which falls in the realm of the board. Execution of the policy is what your managers do. Accountability, we have spoken about it. Supervising management, creating the organization structure, creating the communication links, creating the interactions, and ensuring succession. These are the 4 tasks of the board. But this leads to dilemmas. Should the board take a risk or should be super cautious? Right. But isn't that a contradiction? It is. It is something that one struggles with. It is a dilemma. How much of a risk is a risk? Right? See, you can calculate. But what happens, I had calculated and invested in January 2020. And what happened in March 2020? Maybe a special case, but my cash flow is a reality, madam. Right? Cash flow is the reality. How to adapt to that? Right? What did we do, for example? I'll give you a hardcore example. We used to have, generally when I consult to the firm, I ask for a rolling business plan, which means every quarter you have to project 4 quarters forward. Right? So when COVID happened, we said no, we will project for the next 1 month. So the policy changed. Right? Because projecting for a 4 quarter, I mean, even the Americans didn't know where it was happening, the Chinese didn't know what was happening, India didn't know what was happening. So what's the point of, so being relevant, being grounded is extremely important. So you have to be adaptable and adapt your policy to suit. So that's one dilemma, right? You have to be knowledgeable, right? But can you put your finger in the pie? Right? So you have to maintain an overview, but you cannot put your... Now again I come back to this issue of being a director and a manager in the company. You see, it's a contradiction in governance principles. Is again, it's a dilemma. Right? The board must be sensitive, short-term issues and long-term issues. Right? It's a dilemma again. If I don't pay the supplier within the time that he wants, will he be a long-term benefit to me? Or if I pay him in the short term, is there a long-term benefit? So you have to evaluate it. It's cut and dry. Now, if the supplier is a cousin, how will you manage it? You can? You can't. He'll come home and give your father a mouthful. Or your husband a mouthful. Okay. Now, If the family relationships are good, it's good. If the family relationships are strained, right, it becomes an issue. It's not the acceptance of your business reality. It's what I want. It's my value proposition, right? So these are all some of the trip-ups. It's be focused on commercial needs, yet you have to look at it a bit indulgently. It's not everything about profit and profitability and employee strength and employee numbers and what's the bonus and stuff like that. There is a soft side to it as well. So these are the dilemmas of the board, coming inherently from the way governance is structured. So how do you solve this? I won't go through this again. The first approach is a hands-off, brains-on mode. What does it mean? You think strategy, you think policy. Don't go out and implement it. Focus on outcomes, not on activities. That's what hands-on, brains-off means. Helicopter perspective. What is a helicopter perspective? From the top. When you see it from the top, will you see the tree top or the soil? Right? That's an inherent contradiction. You have to take a view of the woods, but you also have to stay connected with what's happening at the ground level. Right? That's another dilemma. And there are very elegant methods. When you have dashboards to tell you what is happening, it can be very useful. What does a car dashboard tell you? It says temperature is high. What does it mean? It only tells you that the oil temperature, as I have measured it, is high. It does not tell you if your engine is at fault, if your gearbox is at fault, if your transmission is at fault. A dashboard is just that. It just throws up an indication. Then it's up to you to start delving into it to find out what its implications. So take a helicopter view, which is a dashboard, and when you go down, it is something called a scorecard. You can use something called a scorecard to do it. Effectiveness, efficiency, we have covered. We have covered this. But the sad part is, 98% of board meetings that I've attended focuses on what? On operations. As a director, what have you contributed to the operations? Nothing. But you still keep reviewing it. It's a fault-finding exercise. So, it's all very procedural. There is no debate. There is no thinking. This has to change. Right? In family businesses, with all the members, our board members are family members, this is difficult. Because you may be having a son coming into the business 2 years from now, but your junior-most sister-in-law may have it only 6 years from now. So it will take a different cut, a different perspective, a different thrust. So you must get into a tempo of discussing, debating, honestly, brutally, and if you can't do it, that's where the independent directors and third-party consultants come in. They can help you and guide you. Now, we have finished the tasks. What are your duties? Ensure revenue goes up. This is fundamental. If revenue does not grow, you're stuck. How do you grow revenue? You look at price, product, the 4 P's of marketing if you want to mix volume, etc. Oh, that's very complex. Well, it is complex. But if you don't have revenue, do you have a business? Do you have a business if you don't have revenue? Yeah. So you have to learn that. Otherwise, how will you formulate strategy? Right? It's complex? Yes, it's complex. You have to learn it, you have to learn it. Right? Operating expenses. How many of you have heard of the word productivity? Right? What's the difference between efficiency and productivity? You have to button down, right? Because if revenue goes north and expenses go south, what's the money left in the hand? More, no? Provided you use your assets productively. It's called the capital charge, right? So asset productivity becomes extremely important. So again, capacity utilization, break even, there are a number of concepts that can associate to that, but this becomes the duty of the directors. Learn about how to improve your company's revenue, learn about what are the cost architecture and cost structures of your company, and learn how to manage the assets, leverage your assets, not even manage your assets. Now, you have to build, what are your other tasks? You have to build competencies. Nobody is going to do it for you, especially in small companies, right? You have to scan the horizon. Governance establishes and evolves the ends, interfaces and policies compliant with them. Management establishes and evolves the means, the implementations. So be clear, the two are very different. They're not the same. I keep stressing this. And summary of this is, essentially as directors, you have to learn to envision, you have to foresee, you have to inspire, you have to sensitize, position, deploy, implement, deliver, review, communicate, audit, account, and give it back to envisioning. A lot of things to do. If any director can escape this, then he can become a manager of the company. There's a lot of work to do in this, hell of a lot of work to do in this. Right? So how do you do it? Formulate policy. We have discussed all that. The only thing that I have not discussed is the emotional climate and the culture, but this is a separate subject again. Long-term thinking, short-term is supervising management, and accountability and compliance. Compliance is what the regulator wants, what is statutorily required. Now I'll move on to a different subject called board structures. What is the optimal structure of the board? Anybody has any ideas? Have you ever thought about it? What's an ideal board structure? There are 4 types of boards. The executive board, the independent non-executive board, the unitary board, and the 2-tier board. I'm not covering this because each is quite a discussion in itself. I'll go straight to the unitary board, which is common, where you have the chairman, you have the directors, the managing director, and some directors. This is what's common across India, across Britain, and across many PSUs. This is a standard board. Modified 2-tier board is what is of interest to us. You have a supervisory board and you have an operational board. Balaji has done humongous amount of work on this. Unfortunately, we don't have time for him to pick his brains on it. The supervisory board is where the family directors sit. Right? This is a very European model used very extensively in France, in Germany, in Holland. Right? You do not get involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. The operating board is a so-called professionals, people who are paid to do the job. So the strategy formulation, the outcome definition, the policy management is with the supervisory board, the execution is with the operating board. And you need to have a very elegant system of accountabilities for the supervisory board and responsibilities for the operating board. This works well in family businesses, provided you're willing to let go of your grasp on the operations. As I told you early on, that gives you the identity. You still remain a director of the company, the director of the supervisory board, not of the operating board. Again, there are very elegant rules that can be framed for this, which can be worked out. There are mandated board committees. This I've just included for completeness. Audit committee, nomination, stakeholders, CSR, risk. And there are ad hoc committees, which you form in and around what your requirements are. Now, this is mandated. So any SEBI website will give you. Mark Mobius was the senior investor in Frank Templeton once upon a time. His view is he evaluates companies like this. First, board should be independent of management and any individual shareholders. We have discussed that. Protect all shareholders, especially minorities. We have discussed that. Ensure that management policies focus on increasing earnings and value. We have discussed that. Select capable management. We have mentioned it. We have not discussed it. Ensure that management avoids actions leading to dangerous over leverage. That is your financial part of it. Be careful. Don't borrow recklessly. Ensure that laws and regulations are enforced, not only in the company but by the government. So this is what is considered an optimal board. Right? Many companies are tending towards this. Now, I mentioned about strategy and value migration. Here is an integration of the two. Is this right enterprise for the future? That's a question directors should continuously ask. Right? Has ChatGPT changed your approach to management? It will. The next year it will. Not that it is a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit about it, pardon the harsh language. But it's going to change a lot of things. Right? Does India becoming a number 2 or a number 3 economy, is it going to change the way you work? The way you think? Yes, it's going to change. So you always have to have a mind on what is the enterprise of the future. Enterprise is not only about the board. It's about the board, it's about the management, it's about the supervisory team, it's about the product, the process, everything. How do you do that? You have to balance between value creation and value generation. First is understand the environment. Understand the institution. You must be able to compete productively, address potential business choices, address organizational competencies, decide growth. This is the Kees van der Heyden is a very interesting fellow. He's come up with this, and I think it's a superb description in a very one-page way of saying what you should do as a director. It's a good summary. Difficult, but it's a good one. Now, in our experience, the hallmark of long-lived family businesses, I'm slowly moving into family businesses now, right? Covered most of the areas of governance, starting on family businesses, and we'll dive deeper into it. Family businesses, strong governance revolving around an active board of directors that steers the business, accompanied by a separate council to manage family matters. So we're introducing the concept of a family council here, which is different from the family board or board of directors. This is called family council, family constitution, family charter. Each guy calls it a different name. But the family has to decide, independent of the business, how it's going to govern the business. It's a set of rules, not regulations. It's a set of rules that you all sign up to and agree to. So the role of the family board is formal communication, establish rapport, that's the most important thing, informal sounding board, organize the family AGM. I won't get into it, Balaji will cover this in detail. State of the tasks of the family board, state the purpose, value, ethics, and vision and mission. Develop a common understanding, specify what each member will earn, not earn. Right? One family I know pays all its children equal amount. They don't give club memberships. The written rule is they will all be given only business economy tickets on business when they travel on business. They are free to spend their own money and they're paid very handsomely. They're not shortchanged. You decide whether you want to travel by business class or first class. You decide where you want to go on a holiday. Leave, travel, bonus, everything is included. Nothing will be billed to the company. Except the travel required for business. That's it. Rest of it, they're all paid 1.5 to 2 crores each. They manage it on their own. So there's no argument. Whether the child is deformed or not deformed, he gets this as out of the business. And I'll come to that in a minute. Transparency, we are clear. Integrity, we are clear. Now, historically, Asian families felt and continue to feel that governance is redundant. You agree with me? You don't agree with me? You don't agree? Do you think governance is important? But what do most family businesses think? Is governance important or is it trivial? Okay. And probably you don't want to admit it in public either. You thrived in a protected economy. And that is true for all of Asia, whether it is Singapore, Hong Kong, Philippines, Vietnam. I've traveled all over and I've seen a number of these businesses. Diversification occurred because of networks, what we now call phone banking in India. Right? The same is true in Singapore. Trusted, cozy connections. And many businesses run down over time. You know why? They make a profit, but they don't generate a value. That's why businesses run down. The statistics is this. First generation to second generation survival rate is 30%. Second to third is 10%. Fourth generation and beyond is 5%. Why is that? Why is that? This is the hard statistic, not only in Asia. This is true of Europe. This is not so much in Europe, but definitely of America, of UK. The Germans have a different construct which makes them survive. They have the split family board, which they use very extensively, that helps them. And yet, families contribute nearly 2/3 of the global GDP. So there's something right that family businesses do. If we can learn that, then we can leverage it very effectively. But unfortunately, this happens in many family businesses. Who wants to read this out for me? This is a difficult one. Please. Pardon?
Moves towards towards a decline, or do you mean it splits, or do you mean it's handed over to professionals? What
No.
is that survival?
It can be one, it can be two, it can be three, or a combination of all three.
Okay.
Most decline, right? Because there's not enough cash in the business. See, what happens is, and this is real, I'm giving you a practical example. If you have 4 children in the first generation, and each of them have 2 children, they come into the business where you had 4 homes, 4 telephones, and 4 cars. It's now 12 homes, 12 telephones, and 12 cars. And you know what? When you have 12 cars, you need at least one spare car in case one breaks down, no?
Yeah.
Right? So that's one aspect where you fail. You take too much out of the company and don't create value. Second thing is you sell it out and get out. So when I say it doesn't survive in this 3-4%, not in the original shape and form of its ownership and its business.
Okay, but in a changed form. Maybe it could have parted or sold out.
Some could have changed form, but it's a very interesting study. You know, in the 1950s, the Fortune 100 company, Fortune top 10, none of them figure in the 2020 list of Fortune top 10. Right? So it happens not only in family businesses, but also in corporates. I won't call them professionally managed businesses because that's another term that I dislike. Okay? So it happens. And this syndrome that you see here, can somebody read this out? I love this statement. Yeah, please.
Yeah, should I just continue?
Continue, read out. Unless you have another question that I have not answered.
No, I think that was fine. How many know of people with this attitude? I swear that to the best of my knowledge, which is pretty poor and may be revised in future, my company's accounts are more or less accurate. I have checked this with my auditors and directors who I pay to agree with me.
Who has said this? I have not said this. Who's the author of this? Oops.
The Economist.
Economist.
It was a cartoon in The Economist.
Obviously, chairmen don't like such presentations. They've shut off the electricity, right? Okay. See, essentially, this does not require the slide when it comes on. Strong founders have generally weak successors. That's a corollary that is very well established. Peter Drucker has written extensively about it. We tend to live in the past. We don't consider the value propositions going forward. Right? My grandfather did it, therefore it must be right. My father said it, therefore it is the implicit truth. Right? The framework, the situation, the circumstances on which they took those positions may not be relevant in today's circumstances, other than accountability, transparency, and integrity. Right? The circumstances of the business. And slow deteriorating financial performance is something we don't recognize. Because we get our salaries, we get our take home, we get our rents paid, we get our servants paid, we get our cars, we get petrol paid, we get our everything done. But suddenly you realize you don't have enough money for renewing your capex for a modern process, which is what Indian industry went through between 2014 and 2017-18, which is why you saw a steep fall in business, the economy. Right? I love this one also. Who wants this? Who's willing to take this up? Tongue-in-cheek about Steve Jobs, turtleneck, right? Even if the owner has passed down, in his name we create a lot of confusion. If granddad had been alive, this is what he would have thought we should do. I can see many faces lighting up when I make that comment. Right? Right? Now, last few slides before I hand over to Balaji. Ownership comes with accountabilities and responsibilities. And as my senior at IIT put it, accountability is the flip side of autonomy. It is Duveri Subbarao, our erstwhile Reserve Bank governor, who was a hostel mate and a senior. Here is what family businesses have to deliver. Short term, you have to maintain an income stream. To whom? To whom? Family business specific, the ownership. Yes, stakeholders is one side. But within the family, you have to ensure an income stream. Whether that member is mentally retarded, that member is a genius, you have to ensure that is, why is that? Did you inherit the money or did you create that money? You inherited it. So short term, You have to ensure, how could it be? I mean, there is a trust which takes care of rental, which takes care of the education, minimum requirements. I'm not saying you have to take care of his lifestyle where he's traveling world over first class. That's not what I mean. For his basic food, clothing, shelter, Maslow's lower end of the hierarchy is something you need to provide for. This is fundamental. Yenaithu re? Second, if it's feasible, help him grow the income. Right? Grow the income. But third, maintain his inherited wealth. Once he has inherited the wealth, to grow that wealth is not your problem. It's the individual situation. So when you address the family constitution and family charter, this is something that you need to ensure. Have you ever heard of a poor Tata? Have you ever heard of a poor Birla? Why? They've ensured that the successors have a minimum income and a minimum lifestyle. How many wealthy Birlas have you heard about? Kumaramangalam Birla and his daughter. Anybody else? Yeah. So the fundamental responsibility of ownership is very onerous. And so grow wealth or profitability, need for capital, shareholder surplus we have already discussed, excess of cost of capital we have discussed. Now what are these circles doing? If these come closer together, you increase value. If they drift apart, you destroy. If they come closer together, you create value. If they drift apart, you destroy value. And value has only two choices. Either you create it or you destroy it. That's all that you can do. For creating a value, profitability is essential, profits are essential. But because you're profitable, it does not mean that you're creating value. It has to be a conscious effort. So just to tell you how complex the business is before I close up. In a corporate, there's ownership, there is business. You have three interfaces. In a stakeholder model where family is the owner and there is also the director, business, you have two models. In a family business that is family managed, you have 7 interfaces. And in a professionally managed, family run business, how many interfaces are there? Now, all the rules of governance are not written to address this. That's one of the failings in governance, is this sort of a complex relationship. Everybody says, oh, family business, third generation, get a professional manager. Well, you have a hell of a problem, right, in trying to organize this. This is not easy. What are the 12 interfaces? Yeah. Family and ownership. Hey, what's happening, man? The 12 interfaces are family and ownership, ownership and management, all the 12 areas that you're looking at, right? Yeah, it's come back. Something loose here. So you have these 12 areas, and when you write a family charter, you will have to cover all of these areas of the rules of working. So add the regulator, and you'll see how complex it is, right? It is not an easy subject, but what I've tried to show you are the basic fundamental working principles of governance. I've tried to explain what is it that you need to be looking at. I've tried to cover what are the fundamental family constructs, what are the sort of relationships, how complex it is, and how diverse it is. So with that, I'm now asking Balaji to come in and take it from here through to the next end of the session. Thanks, Balaji.
Thanks, Ram. And thanks for waiting so patiently. I hope you have the capacity to take in a little more. I won't be as long as he has taken, but still there's still a few important points to mention. The first thing is there was some statistic about first generation, second generation, and third generation and how businesses decline. Yet family businesses are contributing substantial portion of the GDPs of countries. The reason is that I would regard family businesses as nurseries. The sheer numbers of family businesses is the factor contributing to this share of GDP. But you know what happens in nurseries? Nurseries also have limited scope. Beyond a certain size, the plants do not continue to grow in nurseries. They cannot become trees in nurseries. So we need a little different environments. That's the reason why family businesses are not all of them. Many of them go on to great heights, but as a rule, not all of them are able to make the big leap. So in asking some questions about, vital questions about that families have to address, we have to first define what constitutes a family. Who or what constitutes a family? How is family ownership defined? How do the family, board and business interact? How should they interact? Will these relationships change over time? If yes, how and why? What are the explicit and implicit systems of checks and balances? Who is going to oversee all this? Now, every family must craft its own definition of what a family means in its context. And there is a good reason for this, because people don't seem to be in agreement as to what constitutes a family. Now, for example, the International Finance Corporation says a family is where the voting majority, family business is where a voting majority is in the hands of the controlling family, including the founders, who intend to pass the business to their descendants. Another definition, the second one by the Boston Consulting Group, says the family must own a significant share of the company and be able to influence important decisions, particularly the choice of chairman or CEO. And there must have been a transition from one generation to the next. And this is a problematic definition because should a family own a significant share of the company for it to be able to exercise control? Not necessary. It's possible with a very small shareholding, the control of the company can be with a certain group of people. That's and then we also have this problem of a tangle of cross holdings that many families employ to control various businesses. And that, after a point of time, as generations pass on, it becomes more and more difficult to untangle these cross holdings. And it's a dangerous trap to fall into. The next definition is also interesting because it says a group of individuals related by blood, marriage, or adoption who have a claim on the family business or other common family assets. It is important to highlight that the family is not an investment group, meaning that people do not choose to be part of it. So, what does this mean? Who has a claim on common family assets? What is a common family asset? A share cannot be a common family asset. So, it's a little bit difficult to understand this definition, but it is given by the World Economic Forum in its document, A Primer on Government of the Family Enterprise. So, the lesson here is that if I am involved in a family business, there must be a specific definition in my context, and that's quite important. Now, other question, is the promoter group to be called a family? Is it only shareholders? If it's only shareholders, then the position of non-shareholding family members becomes very weak, because shareholding denotes some kind of power, a voting right, which a non-shareholder doesn't have. Now, what about shares with different voting rights? Now, even in India, now we are allowed to issue shares with different voting rights. Some may have votes, some may have no voting rights. So where does that leave shareholders of different classes? Now, the most important point I want to emphasize here is as a shareholder. As Ram mentioned that we own shares in a company, we do not own the company. And we have, as shareholders, we have only specific limited rights. And what are those rights? First is to elect directors and thus to participate in the management of the company through them. The second is to be able to vote on resolutions at general meetings of the company, to enjoy the profits of the company in the form of dividends. to apply to the court for relief in the case of oppression, relief in the case of mismanagement, winding up of the company, and to share in the surplus on winding up. Now, this is a judgment of the Supreme Court of India in a very famous case in the 1980s, LIC versus Escorts. These are the only rights shareholders enjoy. We are not entitled to any other rights.
The point that Balaji mentions is, you can demand a pound of flesh when the company is wound up. But in a running company, you cannot say, give me 30% more dividend or 40% more dividend, this is what I expect. That's a decision of the board of directors, who anyway were elected by you and put there to manage the company. Right? So this is a very subtle difference. So we need to understand that difference.
Additionally, even in the case of winding up, the shareholder has the last claim on the assets of the company. First, you know, if you've been following cases in the insolvency IBC proceedings, the creditors are, the committee of creditors is the most important body involved in winding up. So shareholders are not all that powerful as they think they are. So Ram has already dealt with some of these issues regarding balancing value creation versus value delivery and so on. But I want to focus on the different hats that shareholders wear. Either they are only shareholders, they are shareholders and managers, they are shareholders, family members, and so on and so forth. The problem is that if one falls into the last category, say, one is a shareholder, a family member, director, and manager. It's often confusing to that individual what hat he should wear at what time. And in fact, most people end up wearing the hat that suits them the most, given in the given context. So that's one of the complexities of family businesses. So here is also a summary of some of the challenges. The roles that family members play, as we have discussed. The problem of change. The family is inordinately proud and possessive. There is no mechanism to manage change, much less a mechanism to manage transformation. Sources of conflict. New generation is either in awe or contempt of earlier generation, or it lacks the experience because of accelerated promotion. There has not been enough of the rigor of learning of the business. Then there is the other basic conflict of inward focus. Are we doing things right versus are we doing the right things? Of course, in family businesses, nobody wants to hear bad news or to tell the bad news. The first generation is intolerant of criticism. The second generation only hears praise. I'm not telling you anything new. I think many of you are going through these issues in your own context. Loyalists are afraid to ask questions. Employees are prone to covering up family errors.
See, one of the fundamental issues in family businesses, do you hire for performance or do you hire for loyalty? मेरे काम से आया है, उनको नौकरी दे दो. He becomes 60 years old. उसका बेटा भी अभी engineering पढ़ के आ गया, so मिला दो. You should hire for performance, but you hire for loyalty. Right. He will never give you performance. He won't give you performance because he knows. No, he knows you cannot dispense with him. No.
Yeah, it's hiring for performance, hiring versus hiring for loyalty. I think that's.
Sir, may I just interrupt here and request you, as per the topic today, if you can focus, yes, we've learned a lot on family boards and everything, but I think what everybody sitting here is looking for is what is it that they as women need to do? Second, what is it that they need to watch out for? And what should their contribution be? What corrections they need to bring in? That's what I think they're all looking for, and that's been a bit missing till now.
I think if the first point is, I don't think there is any difference between women directors and men directors. If you're on a board, you have to watch out for the same things. So I would be very reluctant to say specifically women have to do this or not do this. That would be totally wrong, because once you're wearing the hat of a director, you are a director, gender irrespective of gender. Second thing is, if you had been carefully listening, there are many places where we have indicated what is to be done and what is not to be done. I think we are also, personally, I'm reluctant to write out prescriptions. We can only give out our experiences, and people have to sort of apply that to their own context, because it would be very presumptuous on our part to prescribe, because we do not know the individual situations at all. So I would be, I won't be willing to do that. But there is enough in our experience to indicate what should be done and what should not be done. So I will leave it like that, and I would request that you please wait till everything is over, and then we can answer specific questions if they are put to us. That would be better. So apart from the rights of a shareholder, the second most important point in family businesses is the emotional aspect that is brought into the picture. As it is governing a business, whatever be the ownership structure, whether a family is involved, whether there's just public shareholding, etc., it is difficult enough, as Ram has outlined the tasks of governing an enterprise. When you add the emotional aspect of the family to it, the task becomes much bigger, because of the simple fact that emotions get attached to everything that happens in a family business. And there are various reasons for these emotions to get attached. And when business have to take decisions based on rational consideration, emotion comes in the way of this happening. So, as we just discussed, we don't hire for performance, but we hire for loyalty. So, family governance is a framework where a joint decision is made among family members based on shared values with a collective vision for the future. It helps by providing families an income. It recognizes and manages and grows their wealth through defined roles for individual family members. And it actually provides a platform where conflicts are addressed through a proper mechanism and ensures the sustainability of the enterprise. So Ram can explain this cartoon. Who's actually running the business?
See, one of the major issues is we micromanage. We put in rules, we bring in professionally managed, all that. But we still are the small guy behind trying to control the steering wheel. Right? This micromanagement is extremely detrimental. Right? Because let's imagine a third generation family member who is parachuted into the business, who hardly knows what the business is trying to tell a 25-year-old experienced, a 45-year-old experienced CEO what he should be doing. And if you think that's funny, it happens more often than you think. Don't micromanage. First rule. Don't manage. Second rule. Third rule, govern the company.
So we said earlier that we will focus on companies which are public limited companies whose shares denote ownership, and we are concerned with companies where those who own shares also run and manage the companies, and they belong to a family. So again, Because we assume that as shareholders we are entitled to something more than this, than the rights of a shareholder, we bring up our children to believe that there is always a place for them in the business. Why do we do that? It's one of the major causes of problems. The entitlement mindset that is nurtured in our children is a cause of many of these family disputes. I believe that this is a single most important factor in fights within families, leading up to litigation and going to courts and getting unsatisfactory solutions. This entitlement mindset. Why should families not focus on investorship rather than ownership? You think and act like investors and be invested in the sustained success of the enterprise and its stakeholders, which essentially means you focus on long-term returns. You leave the running of the business to somebody else, as we repeatedly been saying, and that is the message that if ma'am asked what is one takeaway, it is this, that don't be involved in running your business. Invest in your business, but don't be involved in running it. Entitlement does not require fitness. This is what causes the problem. Should, for example, the family wait with bated breath for children to join the business? Yes, if you're doing that, that's great. Yeah.
No, you're doing that, but let me ask you also a very skeptical question. How many of your children have gone abroad and don't want to come back to the business? Yeah. Yes, it's one of the drivers. Now, the question is, in a family constitution, can you consciously make it happen? That children do not, what Balaji is saying is, this entitled mindset, come what may, whether I get a 3rd degree or a 5th degree or I get no degree, I still have a high paying job in the company.
But that point is not really valid because the kids are already voicing out.
That's happening. Yeah, that's happening now. But what happens, I have seen this happen in a company where the children living in America said, forego the $10 million investment, give us $1 million each. Right, that's a problem. So there are pluses and minuses. I'm not saying all of it is negative or all of it is bad, but as parents, we should be very conscious that children are not extensions of our ego. That is the critical point that we are trying to make there.
So we may want our children to come back, but for reasons other than business. Yeah, so that's I mean, there's no way of saying who will control this. I don't think that you can say we will have to do it like this or like this, because many people are taking these decisions. But my point simply is, based on experience, that if we predicate the success or the continuation of the business based on family members joining in, that is something we should not do. That's all. That is the limited point. So the other point about family businesses, every business has some kind of public funding in it. It may not be just through the medium of public shareholding, but it can be through banks. How many businesses can really say they don't have a single rupee borrowing from banks? And where do the banks get their money from? From the public. Therefore, there is a public interest in your business if you're borrowing money from a bank. So why do we still call it the family business? I don't know. So this is another Ram's favorite cartoon, but
Talking about startups, because your son's friend started a startup and got some $1 million, your son also wants to start it, and you divert the funding into that. Right? These macho looks, all that is fine, but he's not going to ride that Harley Davidson any distance. So when you're dealing with startups, which is a new syndrome, which overshadows the return that you're talking about. They come back, but then they say, Dad, give me a couple of $1 million, I want to start this business. Right. There is no business plan, there is no governance, there is no nothing there. So these are all issues which look very trivial superficially, but as parents, right, we are accountable more than anything else, because the family wealth is now getting destroyed, no?
in fact, talking about children getting a feeling that they always have a place here, there's one author, quite surprisingly and quite horribly, saying that you must discuss business at the dinner table with the family. I mean, that's the worst thing to do. If your children, if you want to talk to your children, you should be talking to them about other things in life rather than just the business. So I don't know where that thing comes from.
As a humorous aside, I wonder how many failed fathers would like to discuss their business at dining table.
Yeah. So just a point about startups. If our children see their peers, as you said, getting funding and going on to do great things, some of them failing, some of them succeeding, our children also would like to see our business. You know, why should we not invest in this or invest in that or invest in that? That's one of the causes of conflict. That some people don't want to take the risk, other people want to take the risk. So there are ways. There
is a company in Chennai, a very large company, a chemical company, which asks all its children to make a business plan and bid for capital. Bid for capital. The family does not get involved in evaluating the worthiness of the project. They have consultants and long-time independent directors. The family gives them the support required to make a business plan. So if they want consulting help, if they want market research, it gives them that help. All children get it. This board decides 1, 2, 3 where the capital is going. Right? No, that's not so easy. Which means the surpluses that the family generates must go into a common kitty. Which means your dividend is going to be less. Which means your income is going to be less. Which means the perquisites that you are getting is going to be less. But it is a small step back to make an objective decision about what is in the larger interest of the family. And when I was dealing with this family, the child which made a presentation for animal veterinary care got the money. This was 15 years ago, which is not very common at that time. So here is a mechanism for you, which you can use, but it requires a lot of forethought. It requires that all the group companies have good quality governance. It requires that all the group companies are healthy and make a value addition that is significant. And it requires an objective assessment. Right? And the children are taught from childhood not to fight this. That's important. Because you will feel sore if your 15-year-old cousin gets the money and you as a 24-year-old adult don't get it. That's up to parents to create that value system. That's something that we definitely have to do. Goes back to that entitlement psychology that Balaji was talking about.
So there are mechanisms to ensure that while the business is governed as it should be, families also can establish a governance mechanism. These mechanisms ought to promote coordination and mutual understanding amongst family members, as well as organize the relationship between family governance and corporate governance. Because as we know, and we talked about the demise of family-owned businesses, when they work well, they are marvels to behold and the envy of family businesses riven by strife. When they don't work, they usually go bankrupt or get bought by somebody else. So what are these mechanisms? Essentially, there are three units that we have to consider. One is the large body of family members, however they are defined. The second unit is the business or group of companies that are in business. The third entity is an entity that could represent the family at large and interface with the boards of the companies that are running the business. So we can call the first thing a family board, then we have the company board. These are the three arms or the three pillars on which this governance stands. So we have gone also at various points during this afternoon, we have gone into the issues and challenges that family businesses face. Some of them come from the business side, the others come from the family side. So for example, dominance of emotion over reason, slow decision making due to consensus building. You want to keep family unity, you want to preserve the unity of the family, so you don't want fights over decision, so you try to evolve a consensus. But that may be slow and that may not be optimal. So if you want to raise resources, there is always the restriction because you don't want to lose control. Employees have a tough time managing family equations, and there's the scope for politics. There's inability to attract professional talent because the number of family members are in managerial positions and professionals don't see very many openings for them. Then there is non-uniform access to business because those who are actually active in the business get more information than those who are not. And then again, we discuss this in the context of startup. There are different risk preferences, and unduly risky approach would be unwise, or if you are very risk averse, it may lead to missed opportunities. Then of course we have business is suffering due to siphoning of resources through related party transactions and so on. This is one of the common problems in family businesses because the family thinks it's not accountable. And from the family's point of view, there are different levels of competence and aspirations. Everyone wants the most high-profile position because what the visiting card says is important. And there is a lack of mechanism to address and resolve conflicts early. I think this has been highlighted in most family businesses as being the most important thing. Again, if you are a shareholder in family businesses, it is very difficult for you to exit. There may be many constraining factors in your exiting the business, so you have lack of liquidity. So the family board is the one that establishes a conscious balance between performance and compliance, and then it establishes the relationship between the business and the family. And of course, everything has to be codified. We cannot continue doing business and running the families like the British run their country without the written constitution. So the family constitution is a prime prerequisite. It is a necessary but not a sufficient condition to govern the family and the business. So what does it deal with? It deals with the purpose, intent, and vision of the founders. The eligibility, roles, rights, and responsibilities of family members, it is agreed to by all. And it includes elements to stay relevant because the environment is not constant, it's changing. It's also a system regulating the appropriate inclusion of the family in business discussions. The creation of family employment, development, and compensation policies. The formalization of business relationships between family members. A succession process for leaders, dividend distribution policies. The process of shaping a constitution is not so simple. I should like to give you an instance of a group based in this state or in the undivided state, erstwhile undivided state, which pioneered the family business construct. And they took over 4 years, had to have 28 meetings and spent nearly 600 hours of discussions among the family members and the consultants that were assisting them in the process. So it took such a long time and so much effort. It took 4 years for them to develop a family constitution. And the timing was ideal for them because they did it when the founder still was active at that time, and maybe he's still very active. Even so, even if this is done when the founder is active, there is no guarantee that success will be. There is no guarantee of success because we don't know what will happen. But it is better to do it when the founder is around rather than the next generation or the generation after that. It becomes very difficult because the more number of people in the family, the more difficult it is to get cohesion. And I was reminded of this when ma'am was talking about the entrepreneur program. And well, if you were to advise them a little further, you should tell them that now they should draw up a constitution or at least a charter or a document to show what will happen when they will not be around anymore. But this is the time to do it, not later when difficulties start arising. So this particular group, they formed trusts. They had a voting trust and a non-voting trust, which to my mind added another layer of complication, but they thought for their circumstances and context that was right, but may not be good for everybody. So the lesson here is, is it ever too late or never too late to draw up a constitution? I think the ideal thing is to do it at the earliest possible stage when the founder is around. So the family charter can be a huge document, it can be a simple document, but essentially it must cover relationships and communication and policies and procedures. So whatever is required for the context needs to be covered. Yeah, this is not complete.
This is not complete at all. This is just a sampling. This can vary with situations, circumstances.
So again, to emphasize, not every eventuality can be foreseen and provided for in the Constitution. Governance issues can crop up when the business is doing well or when the business is doing badly. There is no logic for problems to crop up in families. There is absolutely no logic. The other important thing is we have a set of shareholder rights. Some of the agreements, the shareholder agreements that form part of the family constitution, at some point they may be violative of a shareholder's fundamental right. The shareholder has the fundamental right to sell his shares to whomsoever he wants. If there is a family constitution that curtails that right, that would not be a great thing at all. So extensive preparation is necessary on the part of every member of the family when working with consultants, because family members should be on the same page. One or two family members can, by adopting irrational postures, can scuttle the whole thing. So to emphasize again, family constitutions are a process, not a one-off document. And while a constitution is often suitable when put in place, both the family business and the world around it are always changing. So the rules need to change with it. It is therefore necessary and to review and update the family constitution regularly to remain relevant. family constitutions are not generic templates. They should be always tailored to the unique characteristics and needs of your family.
Balaji, just 1 minute. Just go back to that slide. See, this answers the fundamental issue of governance. There is no generic template. Whether you are a male director or a female director or XYZ director, there is no generic template. You have to make your own. We can give you all the governing conditions and set of guidelines, but they are just that, guidelines. You draw up your own situation. In the next few slides, we will explain specific issues, but even that, we know from experience, is absolutely trivial. I'll leave it to Balaji.
Yeah, I think we've covered this. Now SEBI's latest move is that there will be no permanent board seats. Means the days of the founder staying there and not getting up from his chair is no longer going to hold valid. So we can see here a gradual push towards regulating all kinds of companies in the same way. If you're a corporate entity, whether private or public, you're all being pushed towards the same regulatory, under the same regulatory umbrella. Yeah, so I think we have covered most of this. So in the context of the question, women, the role of women and what is special about their role. So they have the great advantage of being able to nurture better than men, but they also bring a lot more emotional quotient into play in the boardroom. So that has been my experience, and has been the experience of other people as well. So if, for example, one had to do an appraisal, and one were discussing, let's say, a nephew, a niece, a son, daughter, the man and the woman would definitely, not adopt the same perspective in doing the appraisals. And certainly if a woman would probably be looking at her child, son or daughter differently from a man. So I think this is one of the problems where family members are employed and they have to be appraised in a fair manner, on a par with other employees of the company. Then we run into these kind of issues. So we've also, and then as Ram said, we have so many problems in the family. People fall sick, people are otherwise deprived, marriage produces its own set of problems, separation produces its own set of problems, and things can become very messy and nasty. So how does a family provide for these eventualities? Is it really possible to foresee what will happen? Beyond a broad understanding of what to do, it's very difficult.
Balaji, I'll just add one point here. The second one, value system conflicts brought on by marriage. How many of you agree with it? What do I mean by it? You agree with it? Why? That's a consequence, but what is the cause? Will you get your child married into a family which is not more or less in sync or aligned with your social and economic status? Do we bring up our children to be meek and weak, or do all of us put dumb into our child? Now, when he goes into that family or she comes into this family, what happens? There is conflict.
Increasingly also that parents have less and less choice about how their children will marry it and whom they will choose as partners. So it's not not even a question of whether you can decide, I will choose somebody at this strata or whatever it is status.
Don't underestimate this in your businesses. Don't underestimate this. This, in my estimate, has been the cause of grief in many, many family businesses. Right? You get your child married or the child marries and you're very happy about it. You're not thinking about the consequences, but what happens when that new person comes into your board. Or you exclude him or her from your board because she's very aggressive, she's very different. Not only, you will never be prepared because you, yeah. Right. Right. Therefore, again, go back to the supervisory board and operating board construct, which we mentioned. Right. That's a difference, so that they stay away from consequences. Right. This is an extremely serious issue which has to be addressed, and has to be addressed not as and when it happens. You have to keep thinking about it because this has got enormous implications on that business. And let me give you another example. वो बेटा तो घर जमाई हो गया तो, right? That's not on, no? Right? So these are all, every one of this is loaded. Divorce, very common today. Separation, not uncommon. Children born with defects, not uncommon. Right? Migration, path migration, not uncommon. Each one of these affects your ability to govern. And who faces the brunt of this? The women. So you will have to think that, yes, please. Could you give a, yeah, please. Right.
She is not a part of the day-to-day operations. She heads the CSR. If you see, most of the women directors or women, the wives of the company executive directors, mostly take the foundations, like Nita Ambani takes care of the foundations and the social activities of the. So why is it that they are not in the executive role? How many companies have been doing this? We are talking about women on family boards. So how many women are actually executive directors? That is my question. For me, it doesn't apply because I am the owner of my own organization. But then talking about family organizations, that's a question actually probably many of them would like to know.
I answer the question. I was going to answer the question if you didn't raise the question. I haven't known Nandan and Rohini personally for the last 40 years.
Murthy and Narayan Murthy peripherally. When the 7 people started the business, Nandan and Narayan Murthy used to share one Omni. And if we invited each other with 3 people for dinner, buying 1 bottle of rum, the cheapest rum, that time Sikkim rum, at 17 rupees, 6 of us sharing 3 rupees each was an achievement. Now, when they hired Chris Gopalakrishnan and they hired all those Dinesh Kumar and other people, there was not enough in the business for the wife to join the business. Right? Rohini was a journalist. Right? She met Nandan when she interviewed him and they got married. Rohini's sister is my classmate, much my junior, but still we studied MBA together. She was a journalist with an independent profession. There was no room in the business in the sense they could afford to employ another person because these 7 people themselves were struggling to pay themselves their salary. Now, when they became successful, please remember, these women had established their own independent identities. My question to you is, why should I subsume a woman's identity just because she has to join my business? She can go on her own. If she chooses to join my business as a director, I come back to the issue. They should not be directors and managers. Right? Now, Narayan Murthy firmly believed in the governance that the family should not be in the business till he brought his son in. So that's one ruling that has worked for them. In the sense they have maintained independence, they have trusted the people who work for them and created a very strong independent board. And the only time Mr. Narayan Murthy tried interfering in the board, it backfired on them. That's a different story. Right? Nita Ambani draws a salary of 15-16 crores from Reliance as a director. They have enough professionals to run the business. And probably she has accepted she does not have the ability to contribute to what Reliance wants. I don't know. So my question to you is, should I hire my wife just because she's my wife, or because she has the competence and capability to contribute to the business growth? No. No, that's not it. I'll tell you. Their investments have grown so much that for Rohini to manage those investments through her foundation is a full-time job. She's talking about dispersing 1,500 crores a year. Please.
What she's trying to say is, most family businesses, let's not talk of the Infosys or the Infotex today, Cyient and other big companies, okay? And I think she's trying to take examples of people sitting here in this room, where the wife or the lady of the house has been taken on the board because they need certain shareholding or whatever be that purpose. Invariably, she is given two responsibilities. I have my own opinions on it, but I'm just rephrasing that question for you. Either they handle CSR for them, okay, or handling HR, which is really not the corporate HR that you and I are aware of, okay? So that's why she's asking, why are men pushing women into those two boxes and ticking it?
Can I answer that? I mean, this is a problem not only in India, but it's a worldwide problem. And if you, anecdotally, I can say that there are more women on the boards of family companies than in listed companies. Although the listed companies, they're actually fulfilling the minimum requirement. But this is a battle that is being fought in every country, and it is particularly not independent. Women on board, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and it's a problem everywhere. In fact, I think in the US it's even worse. Yeah, so I don't see we are going to get rid of this particular phenomenon.
We will address it head on with two more conditions. Yes, there is a gender bias. Second, if a woman doesn't like to be the HR manager, why do you go there? Right? Why do you go there? No. How can I face my husband? Look, you can't have it both ways. Second, why are there 33% is the requirement for independent directors, women directors in public companies. How many companies have 33%? None. Why? Women directors are not available. They're available, sir. Sir, madam. No. That's misogynistic, reverse misogynistic. I'll tell you why. At the age of 45, 50, our children are growing up, our grandchildren are coming, we are not able to devote this attention, we are not able to do all these rigorous things that governance wants us to. Madam, I am on boards and we are fighting and struggling. We are fighting and struggling. In our board, 33% is there. You tell me how you are a member of the organization. You are a member of the organization. Why are the boards not choosing women? Just because you have a governance certificate, it does not mean that you are eligible to govern. Do you understand the business? Are you willing to? How much does a single directorship take? How much work does a single public company directorship take in a year? Do you know? You don't know. 27 to 40 days per board. Right? Because today's board, it's not a question of just being a director. Because you have to be some committee member. You have to be the risk committee. You have to be. Okay, I put you on the risk committee because you have a BCom degree. Are you able to truly contribute to risk? I believe women, if they study, they can. But if you are on two boards and you're spending 80 to 100 days a year on governing these companies, I keep telling my wife, as women, you have a multiplicity of roles that far exceeds anything that a man can do. Right, and I'm not being facetious or anything, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a mother-in-law, you're a daughter-in-law, you're a house manager, everything is, more or less everything is 50-60% of the time. Do you have the time to contribute? Go around India and find out how many women at the age of 50 step down from boards. Yes, it is. All around. No, no, women have to change. No, no, no. Sorry. Let's not get carried away. If you decide to step down at 50, right, because you have your own preoccupations, should that be stopped? Now you are asking me what's the consequence? To onboard a director takes you 3 years. To get fully, even if I go on a board, despite the fact that I do an enormous amount of study, it takes me about 2 to 3 years to come to full understanding of the business. At the end of 5 years, if you quit?
Ram, I think we have to close now. Yeah. So I won't show any more slides, but since everybody wanted a prescription for the problems of family businesses, boards and so on, my first prescription is that no member of the family shall be in any operational roles in the business. That's the first and the most important rule. That includes the largest shareholder. Yeah, nobody in the family. It doesn't matter what the gender is. Including the largest shareholder, he shall not have an operational role. All shareholders, family members, as the case may be, must act as investors. And they must ensure and they must mandate that the business should be run to provide sustained value to themselves and to all other stakeholders. What they should demand of the business is huge amounts of money as dividend, which can only be possible if the businesses do well. And then you have to find the best people to run the business, leave them alone. So this is the only prescription that can save any business, and more particularly a family business, because the moment relationships and emotion come into it, I think you're doomed from the start. And I say this, it's a little bit controversial. It will put all the family business consultants out of business, but I think this is the only way to ensure that families don't destroy themselves or the business. Thank you very much.
I'll just add a couple of things. See, when you're in family, this may be very crude, but you get upset with what your cousin did when you were 11 years old. And it's that memory that you carry over into the boardroom. Right? Those biases. Whether it's man or woman, that's why I'm telling you from the beginning, whether you're a man or a woman, it does not matter. The only question is, by simply mandating that 50% of the board has got to be women is not going to happen. To get a second woman director in the board that I am, it took us 1.5 years of searching. Right? And we had a consultant, we had multiple consultants. They didn't even volunteer. And it's a large company, it's 3,000 crores. It's not a small company. We didn't have background restrictions. We didn't want to say you have to have this degree or that degree or anything. Nothing. We wanted an alternate point of view. We couldn't get it. Even today, India's statistics is, even though it's mandated, less than 20% women directors. So is it a problem with the women or is it a problem with the men appointing the women? Anyway, men don't appoint directors. It's a nomination and remuneration committee whose selection process is more or less mandated by SEBI, who select and appoint. And my answer to you, ma'am, if you don't like it, don't do it. Right? So my wife in my business, she said very clear, I'm a signing partner. If you assure me that the accounts are clean and I trust you on that, I will sign. Don't tell me about revenue. She's an accountant. She said, I'm not interested. I said, I respect that because she had her own business. She went about her own business. And she gets me advice, I'll give her advice. Take it or leave it. No enforcement. So, if you want to be treated truly as equals, behave as equals. You don't like it, get out. Right? I know. No, the facts in England are also the same thing. UK, IOD started certifying in 2001, 2002. They're not able to get women directors. America, less said the better. Germany, absolute no. That is a misogynistic society. There's no way you're going to get women directors, barring the few companies that hold. Now, the last thing is, you have this sheet of paper with you.
Thank you, sir.
Who wants to read the first underlined part of it in the second paragraph?
We're running out of time.
I know.
You're already on extended.
I know, but time is
in
governance board meetings. Time is not of the essence. Who would like to read? Why don't you read it out, Ritu? The first paragraph underlined.
My experience has been that there is no substitute for time-tested values of honesty, integrity, and accountability. It's not switch on and switch off. Very true, sir.
Have I said anything different in the last 2.5 hours? I could have given you this and closed the case. Then we would not have had these very interesting debates. Thank you very much for your participative approach. We hope you are able to take away some value. Lots. Right? And the bottom line is, just be a direct. Forget about being man, woman, or angel. Right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Balaji, for sharing your experiential knowledge with us. It's my honor to now invite Ms. Aparna Reddy, Senior Vice Chairperson, Flow Hyderabad, to deliver the vote of thanks, and Ms. Indu Agarwal to present the autograph sheets.
Good afternoon, everyone. Flow would like to thank our esteemed speakers for their valuable insights and engaging dialogue today. Mr. V. Ramakrishnan, Founder and MD, Organization and Development Private Limited, Singapore. Mr. Balaji, Trustee, Palkiwala Foundation, Day Chair, Ms. Usha Rani Mane. Our sponsors, premium sponsor Kaveri Seed, Shivnarayan Jewelers Private Limited, premium diamond sponsor of Freedom Healthy Cooking Oil, diamond sponsor ARL Tires, initiative sponsor of Prayag Nutri, the past chairs and the members present here today, and the media. Thank you. Join us for high tea.